Hey, what's happening, everybody? You're listening to The Soundtrack, a podcast discussing film, television, and video game music with the fans, geeks, and super freaks. Happy March, happy St. Patrick's Day, happy spring break. Hope you had a good spring break if you're on spring break. It's your host, Zack. I've got a 9th podcast episode for you. This is episode number 9. Thanks for sticking with me. This has been a lot of fun so far, and I can't wait to do more. Well, Oscar season passed last month, and I was talking about 90s sitcoms during that, so I kind of missed my opportunity to talk about more film music, but we've already kind of done a lot of film music, I feel like, so it was good to take a break from it for a while and do video games and TV. But now we're back to movies, and in the spirit of Academy Award-winning movies and just great filmmaking in general, and great film music, I'm going to talk about The Lord of the Rings this episode. So we're gonna have a good time talking about that. My brother Alex is going to be on once again, and we are just the biggest Lord of the Rings fans. We've watched all the movies, we've played all the games. Alex has read all the books. I've read some of them, but we're talking about music. So the movies are going to be what we're going to focus on. All the music by Howard Shore. So we're going to dive into Howard Shore's work and see what sort of techniques and things he used to really bring Middle-earth to life through music. So I'm back to doing my solo portion, though, for this episode. So I'll talk to you guys about some specific things first before I bring Alex on, so we can talk about the nitty-gritty details of some film composing here. So I hope you're as excited as I am. And there's not much in the way of news this month. Just still working on my presentation for these kids for this music industry clinic that I'm going to be teaching in June. So not much new there. Just still working on that. I'll be sure to share more of that with you guys as we get closer to that. It's just a really important project for me. I'm glad I'm going to be able to teach some kids about very important stuff about becoming a professional musician. I can't wait to do it. So, that's coming up soon. And as always, check out my website, mutecitymusic.com, for any new stuff that's going on there. And also my Patreon. I've been tweaking my Patreon a little bit here and there. Changing goals and setting up rewards and stuff so that it's a little bit better for you guys. So hopefully you'll join me there, and we can work together to make some really good projects come out. So be checking out Patreon and all that stuff. And all right, I think we're ready to get into it here. So let's talk about The Lord of the Rings with music by Howard Shore. Just to give you a little info about Howard Shore, if you don't know, he's the composer of 4 different Oscar-winning Best Picture movies. He worked on Silence of the Lambs, The Departed, Spotlight, which came out a couple years ago, so a very recent film, and, of course, The Return of the King. So he's been very active throughout his years. But my favorite fact about Howard Shore was he was actually the first musical director of the Saturday Night Live band. I think from like 1975 to 1980, something like that. I'm not sure. And I think he played alto sax in the band as well. I'm not positive about that either, but something around that time. And what a great lineup he had. The great thing about the SNL band is throughout the years they've had some of like the best players. If you don't follow jazz, you may not appreciate it as much, but it's the SNL band over the years has had great jazz musicians and fusion musicians, so musicians that have combined jazz and rock influences and funk and different types of music in their own playing with their solo careers. And obviously SNL kind of reflects that because of the type of music they play on that show. Over the years, great musicians that have played in that band, and like Michael Brecker, Marcus Miller, David Sanborn, Bob Cranshaw, who was Sonny Rollins' bass player. Sonny Rollins is a jazz giant. So just a lot of great musicians that have played in that band over the years. Paul Schaefer, even if you watch the old Late Show with David Letterman. Paul Schaefer was the keyboard player and the band director of the CBS Orchestra. A lot of great players have come through there, and Howard Shore was the first director with that first group of musicians to play, and it's still, even today, some of the best players in the business are working in New York and on playing in that band. So I just think it's really cool. That's my favorite fact about Howard Shore, is that he directed that first group. So he really knows his stuff. He doesn't just know film scoring. He knows he understands jazz and many different types of music. He understands all of that, and that's what I really like about musicians like him, is being able to tap into different genres and to get inspiration from everywhere. And he's just so versatile. So Howard Shore. See, people talk about John Williams and Hans Zimmer and those people a lot, but I really have a lot of respect for Howard Shore. And he should be in that conversation as one of the marquee composers. So yeah, just some fun facts for you there. Now, turning to the music of the Lord of the Rings now, Howard Shore, and a lot of composers do this nowadays, but Howard Shore with Lord of the Rings, this technique that he used in all of his film scoring, especially in this series of movies, was very apparent. It's called Leitmotif. I think Alex Reed and I maybe mentioned it when we were talking about Star Wars with John Williams, and talking about how episodic movies like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings that are like trilogies, multiple parts, and these kind of big grand adventures, the music tends to tie in with certain themes that keep reoccurring. So that's what leitmotif is like reoccurring themes that are attached to a particular character or a setting. So just in general, like a motif is like a reoccurring idea, a repeated idea that's very distinct and that dominates an artistic piece or a piece of literary work as well. But leitmotif is music that is attached to a particular character or setting that carries through all the different movies. And so this is a technique that even though it's been used in film music a lot recently, this technique has actually been around since like the 19th century with Richard Wagner. He was I think the one that popularized this technique of leitmotif. So now, there's a video out there on YouTube by, I don't know if you know this channel, The Nerd Writer, but he does a lot of videos on different things, artistic things, movies, music, and all sorts of things. It's not really limited to one topic. He talks about a lot of things, but he does a video on Lord of the Rings and Howard Shore and leitmotif, so you can check it out. I'll provide a link in the episode description. So I could talk about Lord of the Rings kind of from the very beginning. He talks about it from the very beginning, the first movie. He mostly focuses on the Fellowship of the Ring. But since he focuses on that, I want to talk about the Two Towers themes because, first of all, it's my favorite movie. So one of my all-time favorite movies and my favorite of the trilogy, the original trilogy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my favorite track from the Two Towers. It's called the Urkai. It's my favorite track in the movie, and it basically covers all of my favorite Lord of the Rings themes. And the amazing thing about, we'll listen to it here in just a second, but my favorite thing about Howard Shore's writing in these movies is how quickly themes go from one to the next, and there's some overlap and some interesting harmonic changes that happen to affect the mood of whatever theme is playing. So really, there's not a whole lot of other underscore. Like all the underscore is some sort of theme that's making a statement, and that's how the underscore. That's how the music is composed for this particular for these movies. There's nothing generic about it. Like everything the reason why the score sounds so unique, just like a Star Wars, like a John Williams score, kind of, is that all these unique themes are playing, and that creates the underscore of the movie. There's nothing extra about it. There's always a purpose to every piece of music that's underscoring a scene. So here's the Urkai track. It's my favorite track in all the movies, and then we'll talk about each individual theme and the way they flow between each other. I think it's really cool. So here we go. Yeah, so the movie starts actually with a flashback to the first movie, in the Mines of Moria, when the Fellowship is all together and Gandalf is fighting the Balrog. This would be really funny if you've never seen the movies and you're listening to this. None of this would make sense. So that's how the movie starts, but actually the way the Fellowship starts is very different from the way the Two Towers starts. The Fellowship starts very dark, very ominously, and different themes are stated at the beginning of that one. At the beginning of this, of the Two Towers, the movie begins pretty heroically after that flashback. So the first unique track to this movie, really, that you have is a restatement of the Fellowship theme, and then it quickly shifts to the two main themes of this movie. There's actually a theme for each tower of the Two Towers, for which the movie is named. You have a theme for basically the Eye of Sauron, that tower that the Eye of Sauron sits on top of, and then you have the Tower of Orthanc, where Sauron is. So you've got these two main pillars of evil, and each one has a theme. So the Eye of Sauron theme is basically this. Here, I'll play it on the piano. You can hear my wonderful piano playing skills. Okay, so that's the theme for the Eye of Sauron's tower. It's called Barad-dûr. And so here's the Tower of Orthanc theme. Yeah, and then it's got all the big thundering percussion around it. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, just listening to the track, from a recording standpoint, it sounds really cool the way the percussion is recorded. I think the percussionists are playing at a pretty decent volume, but throughout the track, especially the beginning of the track, it just sounds very distant and sounds very open because, I think when this music is playing in the movie, it's showing you a lot of panorama shots and like a lot of far away shots from the characters, so you can just see the surrounding landscape. So I think that percussion kind of and it helps for the build up too. It just sounds very distant, and then all of a sudden it just comes thundering in, and it sounds really amazing. So I think just even from a recording standpoint, I think they did a great job of mixing, creating a sense of like spatial awareness within all these tracks, especially the percussion. And then you've just got this hammering percussion part that comes in at the Tower of Orthanc. And I think that's always been one of the trademark themes from all the movies. I think the Orthanc theme, especially for that percussion, that rhythm, is just very driving. I think it's a very distinct sound when it comes to the Lord of the Rings. So really cool use of percussion and ways of recording it, and it just sounds very big, especially with the reverb and all that stuff. So that's just kind of a side note on the recording aspect of it. Yeah, so there you go. I guess that's maybe better than me singing it, right? So actually, it might be cool. If I put in a string patch, it might sound really cool too, because there's still two other themes. There's the Fellowship theme that's restated, and then you also have another new theme, the theme of the Rohirrim, and their theme is really interesting. It only comes up very briefly because that's just the part of that's the part of Middle Earth that they're in at that point in time. They're traveling across the plains of Rohan. So let's listen to this theme. It comes up very quickly in the track, and it goes away really quickly. But it really sets the tone because that's the. It sounds very folk-like, kind of like the Shire theme, I guess. It sounds like folk music, and it's a very important theme. So I'm gonna play it here. Yeah, something like that. It's a very interesting theme, and you hear it different ways. You hear like solo oboe, I think, that plays that, and then in this particular track, it's played very heroically by the low brass, like the trombones and all that stuff. So you have it's a very sensitive theme. I think that's kind of an interesting word to describe it because it can change. it changes a lot, and because the Rohirrim are a very interesting group of people that are dealing with a lot of hardship, but they were once a proud colony of the race of men, so it's a very sensitive theme. You can do different things with it. And speaking of versatility, the last theme in the track, well, actually, it's the first one that is played in the track, but the last one I'm going to talk about is the Fellowship theme, and the way that's used. In this particular case, it's used really in all its glory, and it's just huge, and it's very hopeful sounding. But then there's times where it's played very softly and very warmly, and I just really love this theme. It's one of my favorite themes in all of movies, really, because of two different ways. And the first way that I really like this theme to be heard is at full power. So I'll play the theme kind of. I want to play it kind of really forcefully, and then I want to play it. You hear the theme played kind of in conjunction with other themes in the movie, and my personal favorite use of this theme with another theme is the Shire theme. The Shire theme is beautiful. It's a great theme, and the way the Shire theme kind of suddenly transitions to the Fellowship theme is just so beautiful. It's just such a great punctuation mark on the Shire theme, like using the Fellowship theme as a punctuation to the Shire theme. And in that regard, that's really kind of sums up how Howard Shore scores these movies. Just in this track that I just played, there's so many transitions. Go back and listen to it again. There's just so many like quick transitions. Sometimes the themes don't even have a transition, really. They just kind of bleed into each other. But there's really subtle orchestration that's going on that doesn't really, it's not obvious when themes change usually. But sometimes there's just enough like connective tissue there to really transport you to the next thing, much like the movie does. It's with its editing and all that stuff. So the transitions, like not just the themes, but the transitions between themes are spectacular. So I'm going to play the Fellowship theme as it's presented in these two different textures, just so that we can compare how they're used. They're used a little bit differently. You'll notice that when the Fellowship theme is playing at full power, it's usually the melody's usually played by the trumpets. It's played by the trumpets in the first track I played, in the Uruk-hai track. But the version I'm going to play now is just the beginning of the Bridge of Khazad-dûm from the Fellowship. This is from the first movie. Just the theme just comes roaring in right from the very beginning on trumpet with the trumpets. And the second track I'm going to play is In Dreams. It's called In Dreams. It's basically the Shire theme with lyrics. It references Howard Shore wrote this song. I don't know if it plays in the credits of the first movie or one of the movies. I can't remember. But yeah, so this is In Dreams, and Howard Shore wrote this song with lyrics as a reference to There and Back Again, which was an alternate title for The Hobbit, Tolkien's first book, which also ends up becoming the name of, in the movie, the book that he's writing, basically the memoir about his travels, Bilbo's travels. The book is called There and Back Again. So that's kind of what In Dreams is about. And it's a beautiful song. And same way, this theme, the Fellowship theme, comes in the intro, but actually it works a little differently. It actually tails the Shire theme. So we hear it in the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. We hear the Fellowship theme blasting right from the beginning, and then the way the Fellowship theme is used with the Shire theme at the beginning of In Dreams, it tails that theme. So like I said, it creates that punctuation mark. So here's the Bridge of Khazad-dûm track, and then In Dreams, and we'll hear how those two tracks use the Fellowship theme differently. So yeah, when it's played softer, when the fellowship theme is played softer, it's usually played by French horn or maybe even the strings, something that's not too in your face like the trumpet is. Um, but it creates this really cool effect that it like the melody just suddenly changes character. It just seems to change character just based on what instrument is playing it. And I think like orchestration is just as important as the composition aspect. I think it all fits together, and when you're in the process, I feel like you have to take certain things into account, not just range of the instruments, but the character of each instrument. So that's why I really like the Urukai track is great because all of the themes that are represented in that one track, the orchestration is just critical for the character and the tone of each of those themes. So and yeah, and they're all different. Like each section of the orchestra takes over for each theme. And it what's great about it is that it also not only is it great for the movie, but it just makes musical sense. So that like this music really stands alone. Like you don't really need the movie to appreciate what's going on in the music. You know, like the evil themes are really driven by the percussion. It's like each section of the orchestra represents a different character, not just the themes representing different characters, but the orchestra itself representing, you know, different sections of the band represent each of the different characters. And then they're combined in interesting ways that, you know, so that each character shares some characteristics and then they're different in other ways. So it's really just brilliant writing, and that's what having, you know, distinct themes and having leitmotif really does for a movie. It just creates all this flexibility, and you can really tell a story better that way as opposed to just random, you know, underscore that may fit the mood of the movie and what's going on screen, but not necessarily telling a story. So that's what we really look for with leitmotif. And Howard Shore was just great at, you know, creating life through the music for all these characters and this setting. So leitmotif is a very important strategy for movies like this, and those are just some of my favorite themes. We'll talk a lot more about the Lord of the Rings and what makes and why the music is so great. But to do that, I want to actually go ahead and bring in my special guest, because I think we've had enough of me talking for right now. My brother Alex is here again, and we actually have a surprise! Ding, 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 ding. Got another surprise guest.
Surprise guest.
Surprise guest. Oh, my God.
I came here all the way from my house.
It's Alex Reed. I had Alex on for
the Star Wars episode.
Star Wars. And so we're going to talk about some Lord of the Rings now. We're all just such huge Lord of the Rings fans. It wouldn't be right to just have one of these two guys in here talking about it with me. So
we got to geek out together a little bit, you know.
So yeah, how are you guys? What's going on? How are you guys doing?
Oh, you know, we're doing great. I mean, Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite subjects in the entire planet. So
right, mine too.
Yeah,
I think we'll have a lot of fun with this. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. I want to basically ask you both the same three questions. And I guess we'll just do them one at a time here. First of all, talk about your favorite overall soundtrack we're just talking about the original trilogy, by the way, for this one, not we'll kind of stay away from The Hobbit.
None of the previous cartoon versions that came out.
No.
Yeah, the Ralph Bakshi animated film.
I almost forgot about that, actually. That's funny. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we could avoid that. So from the original trilogy, just favorite overall soundtrack. How does it hit you? What feels do you feel?
All of the feels.
All of the feels.
Well, my favorite soundtrack has always been The Fellowship, and it just has so many great themes like packed in there, and you're hearing them all for the first time.
Right. It really just gets you going. Like it throws a ton of stuff at you.
Yeah,
right?
It does. And I love it because the movie, too, is built to make a good soundtrack because you're following the Fellowship's journey all across Middle-earth. So you get the elf themes in Lothlorien and in Rivendell. You get the Moria music. You get the Mordor music. You get the Shire themes. Everything is in that soundtrack.
Yeah, it all comes at you once. You get just a broad general sense of what the whole world is about, right? So it's really interesting. I like how the movie starts with like the very first theme you hear is the Lothlorien theme.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe like the One Ring, because it's like this whole movie is about this one ring, right? But to open with the theme of the elves is kind of the Lothlorien elves anyway.
Because the elves are immortal. They've been here longer than anyone else.
It would
the
make
story
sense.
starts with them because they've seen all of this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, I think it's a very I think their themes are the most unique and harmonically, I guess, too.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting like minor sixths thrown in with like major triads. Let's see if I can play one here. I was messing around with my keyboard here and like playing string sounds. So
cool.
like you can hear stuff like in the Lothlorien theme, you hear like this thing. I was playing it a little faster just so it wouldn't.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Because we're not an orchestra here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. But it sounds better slower just because it's
Grander.
it's more wanting to go somewhere, you know.
Yeah. You know what else I just thought of about the Fellowship sound? Well, all of the soundtracks really is all I had for years and years were burned copies of the CDs. But then when I actually got the soundtracks and looked at the packaging, I saw that there were words to the songs, like written in Elvish.
Oh, okay.
And Lothlorien has one of the coolest examples of those with Gandalf's Lament. It's when when Legolas is like, "What are they singing? I have not the heart to tell you." Like,
oh boy,
the words are written out in Elvish, and you can read the translation in the booklet.
Oh, that's cool. I never did that. I mean, that's the great thing about the Tolkien universe is that he created all these languages, right? And just literally everything. How do you feel, other Alex, about
other Alex
general soundtrack stuff?
It's so hard to pick a favorite movie overall. Fellowship, I agree. It has some of my favorite music in the whole thing, in all three movies. But maybe for variety's sake, I'll say The Two Towers. I really like the wistful themes in that.
You have even more new themes are introduced in that one too, so it kind of builds on what's already there.
I think the Rohan theme is just really cool. It's like these songs are almost and the songs and the themes are almost like folk music. Like they almost represent this culture as if it were real. Like it makes it seem like the music that they've put in the movie is like the music of this culture. Almost.
It would actually be like what the kind of music they would play.
Yeah, that's how integrally they fit together.
Yeah, and you talk about instrument choice too. Whatever instrument that is that plays the Rohan theme just jumps out at you. Yeah. I remember it's something special. It's like a Celtic fiddle or something like that. But it's
I think they're played
instrument.
differently. Yeah, I think it's played on different themes or different instruments. I think throughout. I think you have in little bits. It kind of depends on the track, and where they're at in the movie. Are you looking up the name of the instrument?
I'm thinking specifically like the scene where they're leaving Rohan for Helm's Deep.
Because I think you can hear it in French horn plays it sometimes, but I know what you're talking about. I think solo.
Yeah.
It almost to me, I thought it was an oboe, but maybe it could be something different.
Okay, so it's an unusual instrument. It's called the Hardanger fiddle. It's a Norwegian traditional stringed instrument, similar to the violin.
Oh, interesting.
So,
yeah, I was gonna say it almost kind of has a string quality to it too. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
And it's an instrument that comes from a culture that kind of like reminiscent of Rohan, like an old European culture.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. So, like having unique instruments.
By the way, sorry if you're Norwegian. We know you're still around. You're not just old.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Moving on to my next question here. What is the best music you think for a particular scene? Like what, or like just what is your favorite scene? It may or may not have to do with the music that's playing. I'll tell you what mine is, but and it does have to do with the music, but not necessarily. So what particular theme or scene, sorry, that has the best music?
Oh, I think Alex should handle this question first because he literally did a swooning gesture when you asked that question.
I mean, you can make arguments for a lot of different scenes. I personally think that of all the movies, my favorite song and scene is Amon Hen, the kind of the climactic scene of
In the first movie.
of the Fellowship of the Ring. It's go and listen to it right now. You can stop the podcast for a second. Go listen to it. And just the way the theme ties together everything that happened before, and then the foreboding sense that you get of something is about to happen.
Are you talking about like the whole track, Amon Hen?
Yeah,
Okay.
the track on the soundtrack is called
Yeah.
Amon Hen, and so that's where the scene takes place. And then Boromir is killed, and it's that whole shebang. The breaking, and it leads into the breaking of the Fellowship, and it's like one of the saddest things I've ever listened to, and it's just it captures some cinema magic like in a bottle. It's just great.
Yeah, that growing, like you said, that growing kind of tension throughout that song, that piece of music leading up to, I mean, it pretty much is, yeah, it's the climax of the movie. So,
But it's not.
it's a little different than other, I guess, parts of the world. It's, because it's not really, it doesn't really take place in any specific region for a race of people, right? Is it
Right.
more of a neutral? It's more of a neutral location.
It's the ruins of an outpost.
Okay, yeah,
Of Old men.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, like ancient.
the race of men. Not
Let me say that again. It's the ruins of an outpost built by the ancient race of men.
right.
So yeah, it's kind of a neutral location now.
There still are some commonalities, I think, with that piece, in relation to other evil themes that you hear. I was showing Alex. It's actually really cool. All of these different themes that have to do with the bad guys, the baddies. All of their themes are in groups of 5 beats, like kind of like a 3+2 kind of an odd meter. We call it an odd meter thing. So it's really interesting. That theme or that piece of music, the Amon Hen, uses a little bit of, because obviously it's a battle, so there has to be some of the evil characters illustrated within that music too. But then also I think the Tower of Orthanc theme and some other stuff. I think the Bridge of Khazad-dûm track, which I played a little earlier in the show, also has that. I think I just played the beginning where it plays the Fellowship theme, but if you keep listening to that track, when the goblins, are attacking them, the goblins theme is in 5 in groups of 5 beats. So it's an odd thing, and I think that's really on purpose too, because it's being evil. It's like distorted. It's like a distorted beat a little bit. So
You can even hear that. You can hear that very starkly in that track when Gandalf's hanging off the cliff, and it just goes boom, 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 boom.
yeah,
1,
right.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the Bridge of Khazad-dûm because that's my favorite track.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah,
So that scene, that whole like
the whole thing. Yeah, and
through to the Balrog and after.
Yep, and I think if I had to pick a very favorite part, it would be Gandalf's death lament.
Right.
But I also love how that track uses male voices for the scenes in Moria where the Fellowship is being pursued and the Balrog is after them, and then it switches to a female voice when it's handling that moment of tragedy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I love how it's handled in the movie too, where all the sound becomes very muffled and it's just the music taking over.
just when we were talking about how Amon Hen is the climax of the movie,
Uh-huh.
the real genius of that song, I think, is that it doesn't handle the climax as you would think in other adventure movies where the music just gets really like overpowering. I'm thinking of like you think of like a Star Wars or a
You mean building to like a very final moment?
think
And
of
the Lord of the Rings kind of has several little smaller bumps.
yeah, like in a Marvel movie, or
Yeah.
like think of Star Wars New Hope when Luke is shooting down the trench
Right.
and the
Dun,
music
dun, 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 dun.
yeah.
Dun, dun, yeah.
It's like so in that moment hitting you across the face with that music.
Right, right.
Which is great. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that in Lord of the Rings, the intensity comes from this sadness of what's happening and the rhythm, like the driving rhythms in that song. It's like the outcome of the battle is unavoidable.
Right.
But it has to happen for this story to continue on. I think that's a cool way to treat the climax musically.
And the Fellowship doesn't really have a blowing up the Death Star moment of triumph. It's very it's kind of a downbeat ending where Boromir dies, the Fellowship breaks up, Frodo and Sam go off on their own.
Right.
So it's more emotionally complex.
Whoops.
Like that.
Very complex. Da, 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 da,
Good old keyboard presets and me accidentally hitting them. Thank you.
I hope you keep that.
I probably will.
I think you could say that even about the final, if you want to call it a Death Star blow up moment for the whole trilogy, is when Sauron is defeated, right? But that music isn't even overpowering really either.
The moment when his tower falls over is the big thing I remember. It's just this burst of horns. But also that
Right.
goes right into Frodo and Sam are being rescued off Mount Doom.
Right.
And then it gets very soft and
Yeah, ethereal again.
Yeah.
Like immediately. You don't there's no lingering on the music.
You're talking about the very end of the Return of the King?
yeah.
When they get
Yeah.
airlifted out. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I'll tell you what my favorite scene is. The music that's playing. I can't for some reason find it. On the album, I've listened to all of it and I can't for some reason. Maybe I just skipped over it too quickly. Because I think it's a pretty prominent moment in the movie is when at Helm's Deep in the Two Towers. This is the second movie. The elves come, and the music that's playing when the elves are marching in through the gate, the main gate.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
That's in there.
Like,
That's in
It's in there, yeah.
It has to be, yeah. But for some reason I can't find it. I'll try to find it. And
I'll find it right now.
do you know what track it is?
The Hornburg. It's this you're talking
Oh,
about,
it's in the
right?
Hornburg track, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, that's a great moment. Like this militaristic version of the elf theme.
Right.
Yeah.
Because every time it seems like every time you hear it, I mean, it's not like it's always kind of like soft, but it's just usually slow.
Yeah.
And then and more fluid. It sounds like really fluid, but then all of a sudden it's militant and just really forward driving forward. So I think that's my favorite music from a particular scene, and it just really even creates more hype for that battle, and it's one of the best battles I think ever
filmed.
ever filmed. Yeah,
I
so-
personally think the Helm's Deep battle beats even the Pelennor Fields battle.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. And there's just something about the way it's, and I've seen different YouTubers talk about this particular scene too, how it it's so well edited and just everything really flows together. And then obviously the music really enhances what's going on. They don't talk too much about. They talk more about the actual battle and in the videos I've seen. Nobody talks about really that part leading up to it. It's more just the battle itself. But and then even when it goes into the morning, and Daylight. It's still just the whole thing. I love the second movie is my favorite just because of that, pretty much. So I think have we all shared our favorite scenes?
Mm-hmm.
So I think unless anyone has anything else to add.
I could add to what
No,
we're talking.
too late.
Oh,
We're going on the next
all right,
one.
All right, great.
No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
No, so another one that I always think is really emotionally impactful is when Denethor tells Faramir, "You gotta go kill yourself," basically.
Oh, and
Oh,
go
Credit
back-
song.
Yeah, and go back to Osgiliath and fight the orc horde. that's
oh
in-
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they are charging across Pelennor Fields, and Billy Boyd is singing his song while Denethor is being a slob eating his tomatoes
Right.
in the throne room.
Stuffing his face.
Yeah, it's just so gross. But like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
that's
the
the-
emotion in that.
Yeah. In his voice.
That might be the best moment from the third movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
could say.
think.
I mean, one of
Might be
Like how unique
musically.
is it?
Musically.
Yeah. How unique is it that the Return of the King soundtrack has two actors singing, and it's them actually singing? There's
Right.
Billy Boyd doing that song, and then there's Viggo Mortensen sings Aragorn's coronation song.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a
So,
great piece.
I've never seen that in any other movie. It's
Oh,
really cool.
natural. Yeah.
And then I know, even though we're not really supposed to talk about The Hobbit, I'll talk about it anyway because it's my show. Shut up.
Oh, I'll
Um,
leave then.
Right now.
I don't tolerate Hobbit discussion.
The Reed and I were talking about it the other. I think was it last night or a couple nights ago. The Song of the Lonely Mountain. Is that what it was?
Mhm, yes.
Yeah, it's great. I really want to at least give that a nod, just because, even though it's The Hobbit. I mean, The Hobbit's got great music too, but we could spend probably some time
Mhm.
later talking about just those.
Best trailer song ever. If you just want, just like to give you goosebumps in the trailer, put on the Song of the Lonely Mountain.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about, since Howard Shore's music is based a lot on leitmotif, so like different themes. Can you pick just one theme as like your favorite theme every time it comes into play throughout the course of the original trilogy?
I think my pick would be the Nazgul theme because it's just so scary, like genuinely scary. I'm thinking mostly of like the scene at the Prancing Pony where the Nazgul come in.
Oh, right.
And the voices, and he even uses the strings, dun 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 dun, just those strings in the background, like during the Pelennor Fields battle when the Witch King swoops in.
Oh, right.
Like that string part is playing in the background.
Yeah.
But
Nice bookends to the movie, kind of.
yeah. Anyway, that's my pick.
Because you don't hear it very often, do you? Well, maybe not as often as some of the other themes, but probably.
You hear it most in the first half of the Fellowship.
Okay.
Because that's when the Nazgul are the main threat. But that's my pick because it's
Yeah.
it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It really freaks you out. It's a scary theme.
I'd have to think about mine. What about you over there, Skippy?
Skippy says, I don't know. You're gonna think I'm cheesy, but like the Shire theme,
No, that's not cheesy.
it's like
It's pretty substantial.
it represents the most, I think, to the story, where you start
Right.
in the Shire and then they reintroduce it. The way the theme is constructed, it's so homey.
Yeah.
And yet also there's like a sadness to it that
Yeah,
makes you
I know
feel
what
like
you mean.
might never reach that home again. You won't be
Right.
the same when you come back, which even though they save the Shire, the hobbits don't really ever feel the same when they're
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
And so I
So
think
it's a little bit unsettling in a way.
yeah,
Right.
it's just it leaves you a little bit longing for something
Yeah.
that you remember but you can't quite attain again. So
If I were to interview Howard Shore, I'd ask him that. Like, were you really thinking about that when you were like, how do you approach a theme between movies? Like, are you kind of trying to keep it pretty much the same for the sake of the audience to like really pick up on, or are you trying to like take it in another direction?
Yeah.
May also depend on time, like to be able to write the music.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So I don't know what sort of factors come into play when you talk about that stuff.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a pull or emotion in that Shire theme where the melody. Well, let's talk about the melody first. The melody goes up and then down.
Right.
So it's like a breathing motion almost.
It feels natural.
Yeah, and the harmonies also do the same thing. They kind of slowly descend.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So
And then it kind of goes into sort of a bounciness, and then
like it sometimes
and then it comes out of
Sometimes
that.
it's bouncy and sometimes it's really flowing,
Yeah.
like at
Right.
the end of the Concerning Hobbits
Yeah.
track.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Mhm.
Concerning Hobbits. That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking of.
I have a quick side story about the Shire theme, actually.
Go for it.
At one point, I knew how to play Concerning Hobbits on piano, and I was playing it in our theater class. And one of the girls who really loved Lord of the Rings came over. She's like, "Are you playing that? I could kiss you." And I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
So Concerning Hobbits, the ladies love it.
That's
That's my side story.
a hot one.
If you find a lady who loves that theme,
Marry her.
lock her up. I mean, yeah, marry her. I meant that as a euphemism. Never mind.
Jimmy. Oh, whatever.
Don't actually incarcerate her. 'Cause
She's your rose cotton dancing.
Step
Rosie
one. What is that in
Cotton
Bob's
dancing.
Burgers? Step one. Trap your princess.
Trap your princess. Trap your princess.
That's right. Good. Okay, so I think I've expressed several themes that I think are great, but I never really mentioned what my favorite one was. And it really is kind of a tie between the Fellowship theme. I just can't get over the Fellowship theme, and Tower of Orthanc. I think it's just because I got so used to listening to that when playing the video game, the Two Towers video game, because that's like played over like the main menu and the map select, the level select.
Yeah.
So like you pretty much just hear it's just driven that track is driven entirely by percussion. So I think it's really different than most of the other themes in this. Actually, but the Lothlorien theme is really great too. And yeah, so it's really hard for me to pick. I can't think of what's a more obscure theme.
I think the strength.
I don't know.
The real strength of the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is that the way it mixes the themes, the way it overlays these leitmotifs. And I'm thinking, I wish I'd mentioned this earlier, but really my favorite musical moment of all of the movies for me is at the end of the Breaking of the Fellowship, where he seamlessly transitions into the Fellowship theme again. So like the Fellowship is broken, and Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are sitting there like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And they decide not to give up on their comrades, and
I think that's why the Fellowship theme is my favorite. Like if I had to pick one, it would be the Fellowship theme, just because of it's used with pretty much everything.
There's a few more pieces of music, just like two more pieces of music that I want to address.
Sure.
And three, because two of them have always been linked in my mind. It's the Passage of the Marshes from the Two Towers and Shelob's Lair from Return of the King, because they're such good horror themes.
Right.
Like I talked before about how the Nazgul theme is just so scary. Like those two pieces of music are scary too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially Shelob's Lair, the way it builds and builds and builds. It's just an outright horror track, and that's what makes it so great.
That one's that's one of the more tense scenes, like longer build-ups. Yeah, so it really makes logical sense. It all makes sense, but at the same time, it's not like totally predictable.
Yeah. Using these purely these pure orchestral arrangements, they really hit. They're able to hit all these emotions: fear and terror and
Yeah.
sadness, joy, and
Yeah.
just the whole gamut.
And that's the thing that, like when we talked about the Star Wars soundtracks, Star Wars never has quite that moment of terror that the Lord of the Rings movies do. And so it gives the music of Lord of the Rings a different quality.
Right. Yeah, you just never know, especially in the Pelennor Fields battle, you just seeing it for the first time, you just don't know like what's going to happen, like you feel like, something really terrible is going to happen, like the Helm's Deep when the wall is breached, like that's a pretty terrible, moment.
That even plays without music. I mean, when the wall blows up.
Right. Yeah, the absence of music is just as strong as
Yeah. And there's a few reaction shots of them just standing there shocked.
Yeah.
And it's silent, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something to think about too, the absence of music. Everything tells the story. You need all these things to tell the story at the same time. So yeah, that's great music. And I can't wait to talk about The Hobbit, and so we can really kind of compare those soundtracks to the original, because they were all done by Howard Shore, right? So same composer, so we can really kind of see what the approach was, or try to figure it out between those two sets of movies. So yeah, thanks for coming on and geeking out with me about it. And
Anytime.
we've had some fun. We pretty much kept it straight for the most part. We did pretty good. We got through the questions, and
we stayed on topic.
Yeah. Usually we tend to fall off the rails sometimes. But that was good. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me, and hope to have you both on again soon. Maybe we should just do it this way from now on, just the three of us, since we see each other so often.
I don't mind that. Also, at least for The Hobbit, we should all come back and do The Hobbit.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to think of an appropriate Lord of the Rings quote to say goodbye.
Drums in the deep.
Actually, for first, I just want to say, Reed, is there anything coming up that you'd like to plug, or update on the Deviant movie or anything like that?
Well, Deviant's proceeding nicely. It's in post-production. It's picture locked now, so now we're in the visual effects and sound editing stage. So it's pretty far along in post-production. We don't have a premiere date yet, but pretty soon you'll see the trailer, and the Kickstarter campaign will go up.
Yeah,
so keep an eye out for
Deviant
those.
Movie, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Facebook and Instagram, yep. And check our IMDb page too, because the amount of hits we get on our IMDb page is really important. It helps boost our profile.
That is the Internet Movie Database.
Yes.
They probably knew that. everyone that's listening probably knew that.
Always good to say it again.
That's the little yellow icon logo with the
on your phone, you mean?
that says. Okay, and fell off the rails. Good.
I'm trying to think of my Lord of the Rings quote.
I ruined it.
Drums in the deep.
No, okay, this is mine. It's how does it start though? Long Dark of Moria. How does it start?
We must face.
Okay. We must face the long dark of Moria.
I think we're good. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. All right, thanks. That was great. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Zach Demas, and you've been listening to The Soundtrack. So what would your answers be to these three questions? Shoot me a message through my website at mutecitymusic.com, and just let me know your thoughts. And as always, be on the lookout for the latest news through there as well. And I'm on Facebook and Patreon and all that good stuff. And get ready for the next episode. I think we're in back to video games in the rotation. And I've got Donkey Kong planned for that. So I'm not sure to what capacity I'm talking about that, because there's lots of games to cover there. May just do like an overall favorite Donkey Kong themes or something. I don't know. But I do know that Donkey Kong is going to be the next thing. So get ready for that. And once again, thanks for listening. And I will catch you guys next time. All right, peace.